Namaskar and welcome to Candid Conversation, the program that looks at a topic that is in focus and talks to a person who's very knowledgeable about the subject. And today we are going to be talking about disabilities in the light of International Day for Persons with Disabilities, and we have none other than the Secretary for the Department of Empowerment of People with Disabilities, Mr. Lov Verma. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us here on Candid Conversation. First of all, the 2011 census, it says that the percentage of people with disabilities is just above 2%. But you know, other people say that it's probably much more than that. And also you have now the new act which defines 19 categories for disabilities, so that's likely to go up.
It's a bill at the moment.
It's a bill at the moment, yes. It's a bill at the moment. So, but then that, when it comes in, it will define 19 categories. So, is this number likely to go up significantly?
Definitely. In fact, with regard to the census number, even that we feel is under-reporting, because the World Disability Report says that the percentage of disability in countries is likely to be between 10 to 15%. Whereas our number of 2.68 crores is only 2.21% of the population. We'll get a clearer picture because we want to have a universal ID, unique and universal ID for people with disabilities. It will take about 2 or 3 years. That will be done with, it will kick off with a survey of people with disabilities. So we need to get an exact picture, and hopefully we'll get a much closer picture to the actual number of persons with disabilities. And as you said, the new act, if it comes, if and when it comes into being, it will expand the number of disabilities from the current 7 to 19, and it will include diseases like hemophilia, like muscular dystrophy, sickle cell anemia disease, thalassemia. So suddenly the scope will really broaden, and we've been sensitizing people to it. We hope to get the cabinet approval very soon, and then it will be introduced in Parliament. Right. So then our scope of work will increase overnight in a huge way.
Right. So it's been 20 years since the previous act has been in running.
Right.
And how disabled friendly a country are we? Let me ask you simply.
Well, let us say attitudes are changing, miles to go yet, but definitely there has been a change in attitudes. In fact, I always quote F. Scott Hamilton, who says that the biggest disability is a bad attitude. So our attitudes earlier were that these are people with disabilities are objects of pity or mercy and they have to be helped. But now that whole attitude has undergone a radical change after the UNCRPD was adopted in 2007. India was the 7th country to ratify that convention, so we are very proud of that fact. And now it's a rights-based approach. We recognize that they have the same rights as other people, and they have the right to live a life full of independence and dignity. So these attitudes, of course, mindsets take a lot of time to change, but there has been a definite change in attitudes.
So that's from the cultural point of view, but as far as infrastructure goes itself, I mean, our buildings, for instance, how disabled friendly are they, one would say, and then you have now this Accessible India campaign. What exactly is this campaign about? Thank
you for talking about this campaign, because we need to get it out to the public as much as possible. And yesterday it was unveiled by Honorable Finance Minister Mr. Arun Jaitley, standing in for the Prime Minister who had to rush off to Chennai. Actually, we are looking at 3 verticals. The 3 verticals are built environment, transport, and the ICT, information, communication and technology, the whole ecosystem. So if we are looking at built environment, for instance, we've taken up 50 cities, out of which 26 are the bigger cities and 24 are smaller cities. In the bigger cities, we are identifying 50 public buildings, and we will get an accessibility audit done, and our goal is to make them disabled friendly by July 2016. Similarly, for the 24 cities, we have taken 25 public buildings, and there we want to make them disabled friendly by July 2016. What is more important is that we try to outsource our concerns as well. We've developed an app, people can download that, and they can tell us such and such building, public building, does not have a ramp, does not have accessible toilets, or does not have lifts where they are most required. So we are trying to make it a mass movement, involve the public as well in this. This is with regard to built environment. With regard to transport, we are looking at accessibility audits again for airports, for railway stations, and we are going to urge the state governments to buy low floor buses and retrofit the old ones. Finally, with regard to ICT, we are looking at websites. About 8,000 websites are there in the public domain. They need to be made accessible, increasing the pool of sign language interpreters and making public documents accessible. So it's a very ambitious campaign, and I would like to appeal through the medium of DD that we want all the stakeholders on board, and all of them have to commit themselves to make this a reality for our brethren, disabled brethren.
Now you're talking only about government buildings, sir, but will there be a time when all buildings have to become disabled friendly?
Yes, that is what we see in future. In fact, we have sent a list of guidelines to the Urban Development Ministry. They are working on it. They are in the process of looking at it. And once it becomes part of the building code, then the next step is to get it adopted by all the state governments, because that is a matter which falls within the ambit of state governments. And once they have also adopted it and it becomes a part of their state building code, then we have the national building code and we have the state building code, and the plans will not be passed till the features of accessibility are built in.
And also, what about roads and pavements and things like that? So how accessible are they for people with disabilities? And when we talk about disabilities, we're really referring to mostly people who have orthopedic kind of disability rather than, you know, the other kinds of disabilities.
No, we are looking at...
No, I mean, when
yes.
we talk about buildings, for instance.
No, that is actually, we are looking at all disabilities. It's not limited to just people with visual disabilities. For instance, people with hearing disabilities. So we are planning to have TV programs which have text to speech and also captioning. So that will address both visually impaired and speech impaired. Then increasing the number of increasing the number of interpreters, speech language interpreters. So there we are setting up an entirely new national institute. It's the ISLRTC, that is the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center. That has already been approved by the cabinet. We're in the process of getting it registered and set up, so that we'll not only be able to increase the pool of sign language interpreters, but also there will be research done, and the whole area of sign language will receive a major boost through our center.
Now, when you mentioned public transport, so you talked about low-floor buses, you also spoke about railway stations and airports. But what about trains itself? I mean, within the trains, you know, there are apparently people with disabilities have problems, you know, with the toilets, for instance. Issues like that, sir.
Yes. We are starting actually with the railway stations, because I think that is the key. Once we have our railway stations accessible, that will be a great help to our, and the other aspects also we are taking up with the railways. Now, with regard to railway stations, we have zeroed in on about 705 which are in the A, A1 and B categories. These are the ones, almost 80%, which are most often used by the people of India. And we hope to make them accessible by July 2016 in the first phase, and then continuing we have different targets for different areas.
And what about airports? So all airports will have to be done in a certain period of time?
Yes, in fact we are looking at our international airports first, accessibility audit to be done, all of them to be made accessible by July 2016. Then those are about 18 in number, and we have 78 domestic airports. We want to make them accessible by March 2018. So it's all to be done in a phased manner.
Well, now we also just had this first international film festival for people with disability.
Right. Yes.
How successful was it, and how well received was it?
Yeah, I think it was very successful. As for a first time endeavor, we had a tie-up with NFDC, and we were able to attract some very well-known names like Marco Muller to the jury. Siddharth Kak was there. Some very good entries were received by us. We had screenings of 40 feature films, documentaries and short films, and every day I think we saw nice footfall, at least between 1500 to 2000 people turned up, and a lot of children. So that is where we really felt heartened that we are creating a buzz around the subject.
Now, the government hopes to channel the can-do spirit of people with disabilities.
Yes.
Now, how easy is it to channelize this into gainful employment, sir? Because this, at the end of the day, is the most important thing.
Yes, I agree with you, and the government has launched a national action plan for skilling people. As you know, skill development is now a very big feature of the new government, and we've got a separate skill sector council for people with disabilities. So we've attracted some of the best names who have done a lot of work, and we find that now a lot of corporations are coming forward, especially in the hospitality sector, and engaging people. So the target we've had for the first year is 1 lakh people to be skill enabled, and we are thinking of having these. In fact, we've invited expressions of interest from people, and we will have synergistic clusters of training providers. Plus we will get an input from the industry, what are the kind of skill sets they need, and then we need to get all the actors and all the stakeholders together, which is what we are trying to do.
And what about levels of reservations? So is that also way ahead? Is that a possible? I mean, because most of what reservations for handicapped people, they go to people with physical disabilities. I mean, but otherwise there are other forms of disabilities who don't actually get employed.
In fact, in our new bill, we have raised the level of reservation from 3 to 5, and 1% is going to be set aside for people with mental disabilities, mental impairments. So that addresses part of your question. Secondly, the Supreme Court took a very strong stand on this, because there was a PIL, and the Supreme Court was very unhappy that most of the departments have not filled even the 3% quota, which is mandatory. So then the DOPT, which is the nodal department given this mandate, they called meetings in which we also gave them support. We attended, and all the departments which were lagging behind, they were asked to submit plans of action to fill the backlogs, which they've done, and there's a major drive on these days, and by the end of March we hope to have significant progress in this, and even the Honorable Supreme Court has expressed its satisfaction at the effort.
Is there a certain kind of job, for instance, that the can-do spirit can excel in? Well,
actually, we need to look at each job separately, and that is what we do, because there will be certain jobs which will fall in certain categories, which can be done by people with disabilities of a certain nature, and certain jobs which will not. But you will be happy to know that the Government of India has now extended reservation. Earlier it was only C and D, now it is A and B as well. So the topper this year in the IAS is a lady with disability. She is our brand ambassador, Ira Singhal. She's got 62% disability, some deformity of the spine, and she has topped. So it's a wonderful achievement. And last year a lady was who is 100% visually impaired was chosen for the foreign service. So that was for the first time, and we have a collector in Madhya Pradesh who's 100% visually impaired. So we have so many success stories now, and we are really inspired by these people.
Yes, and success leads to more success, I suppose.
Yes.
But what about access to education? Because some people with disabilities have complained, that really the educational institutions themselves don't have enough facilities for them, and even whether it is in Braille textbooks, for instance, or even in the ICT area, not enough for them to do their research, to study material, etc.
I agree with you that that's a very big black hole, because RTI mandates inclusive education, and I am happy to say that CBSE has mandated that every school should have a special educator, but they have not given any deadline, and the problem is there is a great shortage. So we are trying to do whatever we can, and with regard to Braille, for instance, the Braille presses, we are setting up new ones, we are modernizing the old ones, we are increasing the capacity of the old ones. So we have a separate program with regard to Braille presses. But with regard to special educators. That is a more long term, because it takes time for people to start these courses, but through RCI, which is the Rehabilitation Council of India, we are trying to engage with the universities, with the educational institutions to start more such courses.
And what about the infrastructure for skilling itself? So you did speak about skill development now. Are there any special in those skill development courses itself for people with special needs, special infrastructure as well?
Well, if you look at the government, we have 17 of the 17 centers which are actually with the Labour and Employment Department. They have now sent us a proposal asking us to take it over. It's in the process of being analyzed, and it will be put up for a decision. But those 17 are there as the infrastructure. Then apart from that, I'm very happy to say that a number of civil society organizations are in this space. Whether we talk of Sarthak, which is a trust which is run by a visually impaired person, Dr. Jitendra Agarwal, or we talk of Enable India, which is run by Shanti Raghavan down south in Bangalore. So there are a number of such institutions and organizations which are now taking it up in a big way. So it's a kind of collaboration between us and them.
Right. So how important is this theme of accessible India, along with the recurring themes of the government, Digital India, for instance, Make in India? It fits in along with that,
it
and also
with
Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas as well.
In fact, it flows from Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and it ties in beautifully with the other initiatives of the government. For instance, Digital India. Digital India makes sense only when it is for everybody. Everybody is able to access those websites. So the Digital India, then Make in India, because we are laying stress on certain indigenous innovations, technological innovation. For instance, there's a smart cane which has been developed by IIT Delhi for the visually impaired. So it ties in beautifully with all the other campaigns which have been launched by the government.
So you did mention that there is a shortage of training manpower. People who are, let's say, who are not disabled, the non-disabled people, are they showing interest in helping or becoming trainers in this field? Also, people who need to know sign language, for instance. It's not only the the hearing impaired talking to the other hearing impaired; they have to communicate with other people as well. So, in that respect, how?
Yes, actually, the best sensitization takes place when organizations take disabled people on board, because studies have shown, for instance, that they outperform the people who are normal, and they stay on longer. The attrition rates are lower, and a kind of culture develops in the organization. We've seen this happening with a number of organizations, especially in the hospitality sector. And for instance, if you have a restaurant which is served only by waiters who are hearing impaired, so then the whole the whole energy changes in a sense. If the people who are being served, who come in, they are being sensitized, and they realize that these people are equally good, and the other people in the organization, they also become sensitized. It's happening. Right. Perhaps not at the speed which we want it to happen, but it's taking place.
So is there a severe shortage, let's say, of people who know sign language? For instance, when we have important speeches that are being given, and perhaps they have to be relayed as well simultaneously in sign language, but they are not being done so.
So under our Accessible India campaign, we have a target of training 200 sign language interpreters by July 2016, and for that we have the National Institute at Mumbai, which is capable of doing it. But our main focus is on a standalone sign language and training center which we are setting up, and once that is in place, we hope to increase the number substantially.
So as far as Accessible India is concerned, in the IT sector areas, what exactly is the focus here, sir?
The focus here in the ICT sector is, we have standards, W3C they are called, according to which the websites they have to conform to those standards so that they become accessible. So if there's a person who's visually impaired, for him the screen can be, the font can be made larger, or the contrast can be made different things like that. So we find that there are very few websites which conform to this. So in fact, even the deity has taken up on its own steam before our campaign came along. They had taken up 100 websites and they were assessing them and trying to make them compliant. So it's a slow process, but we have our targets for this as well, and we are in the process of sensitizing all the government departments to make their websites. Apart from that,
what about universities, and because many of these students with disabilities excel and they move on and they want to do research and they want to expand their knowledge and maybe PhDs, etc., but they don't have the same access to information as a normal person would. So in that respect, can ICT help?
Yes, definitely. And in fact, when we are talking of government websites, that includes universities. Yes. So we are taking those up as well. We are going to write to them and they are going to be very much a part of a Accessible India campaign.
So can we say that the educated disabled are a huge untapped economic asset in our country, and if we need to really grow economically, we need to start tapping their potential?
Absolutely. In fact, a study by WHO showed that 5 to 7% of the GDP is foregone on account of disability. So that is the range which we have to exploit, and we find that the barriers are being broken every day. The other day you must have read in the papers about this gentleman severely afflicted with cerebral palsy who has managed to get a PhD,
yes,
from JNU, and these are the kind of success stories which make us hope that people will definitely break the glass barriers.
Right. So now there obviously is a campaign in place, there is awareness, there's more sensitization, but as a society, when do you see us actually reaching where you would be satisfied, having worked in this ministry, where we as a society have welcomed disabled people with the same respect or with the respect that they deserve?
I don't think I'll ever be satisfied because it's a work in progress, and as you keep summiting one peak, you find another peak in front of you. What I am happy about is that attitudes are slowly changing, and there's very much more focus on this area, and in fact, as our Honorable Prime Minister said, that we should perhaps not call them Viklang, we should call them Divyang. So they are children of God in that sense, and we will definitely try and put in place as much as we can from the government sector, and I'm very happy to say that our civil society partners are also with us, and a lot of work is being done.
Right, sir. And with regard to, earlier people used to use terms like differently abled, or people with special needs, etc. But I mean, I have read that many people actually just want to be called what they are, people with disabilities, and yes, respected for what they are, and none of this, there's a sense of condescension perhaps in the way, other terms are being used. Would you agree with something like that?
Well, actually, we are going according to the UN Convention, which says persons with disabilities. So actually the emphasis is on persons and not so much on disability, persons with disabilities. And when our department was actually earlier called Department of Disability Affairs, last year the nomenclature was changed and it was called the Department for Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities. Then we had a big argument about how to make it, what should we call it in Hindi, and all the experts and all the people in this area, in this sector, were consulted, and ultimately everybody agreed with Viklang, because that comes closest to persons with disability. But I think we will take up Honorable PM's suggestion and ask that our name be changed to Divyang Sashaktikaran Vibhag.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lov Verma, for being with us here on Candid Conversation.
Thank you so much.